It is wonderful to be with you this morning. If you are visiting with us, welcome. We are glad that you have come our way. We do hope to get to meet you face to face and shake your hand, and hopefully you'll come back every chance you get. You are our honored guest. It's good to see all of you. I know there are several out of town this morning, making that last vacation trip before school begins. Scott Sager is out of town today, and so here I am. We love our new logo. Come hear Scott preach. Don Hudson is also out of town, and we're so blessed to have Jeff Wilson that has incredible talent, and we're thankful for his ability. Don and Judd Mitchell are in Gatlinburg, and Don invited me to go with him and Judd. He said that they were going to climb Mount LeClante. 3 hours straight uphill. I said, "Can you drive an ATV?" No, thank you. I got a text from him yesterday. They sure did do the 3 hours to the top of the mountain, where then a huge storm came up, lightning struck, and they had to hustle down the mountain in, I believe, an hour and a half, and they were soaking wet. And I thought, thank you, Lord. Do you remember a series? It started in 1996. It's a movie series. There are 8 movies in it called Mission Impossible. Do you remember this series? It starts Tom Cruise, who is the actor that plays the character Ethan Hunt, and it's about an American spy series. Now, you're going to tell your age right here for a second, because some of you may remember the television series prior to the 8 movies, featured films that were released. If you don't remember the movies nor the television series, do you remember the theme song? It didn't have words, but it is so. Do you remember that? Dun 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 dun. Doo-doo-doo. You remember that? It gets stuck in your head, right? But this mission, these secret agents, they were doing amazing things, right? And it always started with a message that would come from some recorded device. And do you remember it always said the same things? Your mission, should you choose to accept it. And then it would give the mission that they were on. And then at the end, it always said, should you or any member of your team be caught or killed, the secretary will disavow any knowledge of your actions. Now, I bet almost everyone in here could tell me the very last phrase of that recording. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Do you remember that? Maybe you've enjoyed those movies. Maybe you enjoyed that television series, this American spy that's doing crazy things behind the scenes that no one would ever know. Do you think we're on mission? Do you think we as Christians have been given a mission by God that's not on secret, that the message will not destruct, and not only will they disavow any knowledge of it, they will put us in the book of life? Do you think we're on mission with God? More importantly, are you willing to accept the mission that God has put before you? We had a great series on discipleship, didn't we? Where we learned that absolutely God has called us into a mission. He says there in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And even in the Gospel of Mark, he says, go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation. I'm afraid we often don't feel prepared for the mission which we've been asked to do. We feel underqualified, inexperienced, untrained, maybe even uncertified. But I'm here to tell you that God has made promises to us that He has prepared us. I'm here to tell you that God has a nature that walks alongside us. And I'm here to tell you that God has given us everything we need to complete the mission with His provisions. And that's what I want us to look at this morning. Grant, thank you for that reading this morning. You did a great job from the book of Exodus. If you have a Bible, if you'll turn over there, we'll be in chapters 3 and 4. You know the story well. And we see just the very beginning of the mission in which God had prepared Moses for, which He was sending him on. This is your mission, Moses, if you choose to accept it. Moses is going to make 5 arguments that I believe we often make when we deal with missions that we're on by God. When we come to that moment where do we take on the mission or not? Are we willing to do what God has asked us to do? And I think we make excuses, oftentimes the same way Moses makes excuses. This morning, let's look at that. Let's look at here in Exodus chapter 3 and 4, these excuses and how God is going to answer every one of them. You know, Moses felt the same way we do. He didn't realize that God had been preparing him for years. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Hebrew, Moses is actually called a Na'ar in the Hebrew text. Na'ar is translated as young boy or lad, but it's really a poor translation because it means so much more than that. Only a few are called Na'ar, Moses and King David, to be 2 of them. It means so much more than a young boy. It means a young prince, one who has been prepared for something special, one who has a mission in the future. Moses has been prepared from the beginning. I'm here to argue, so were we. Like Moses, we make the same excuses. We make the same excuses to why we can't fulfill the mission in which God has given us. But quickly, we're going to see the tools and resources that God has given us to help us fulfill our task. Let's start there in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. We heard again Grant's reading where he has come in contact with God with a burning bush. He says, take off your shoes. It's holy ground. I'm surprised that's in the Middle East. I would think it would be a little south of here, the holy ground, that is, of where you would take your shoes off. As I travel on I-65 often with my family, there are 2 things that we have to do. One is hit a little button on the radio or there in the truck that says, Sweet Home Alabama. And the other is everybody take your shoes off as we cross that border. Maybe not as funny for some as others. There in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, but Moses said to God, who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Wait a minute. Isn't this Moses? Isn't this the guy that was saved in the basket? Isn't this the one who was raised by an Egyptian princess? Isn't this the one that was called Na'ar? Isn't this one that was taught to read and write and was taught military strategy since he was a child? Isn't this the one that killed the Egyptian soldier? Aren't we talking about the same person? Who am I? God says there in Exodus 3, verse 12, and God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign the sign to you, that is, I who have sent you, when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Not only did God prepare him, but he promised to walk with him every step of the way. He says, I've prepared you. You should know who you are, but more importantly, you remember whose you are. You've heard me say that a time or two. More importantly than who you are is who am I? I'll be with you. Now listen, look at again there in Exodus chapter 3, there in verse 12 and following. How did he say that people would know that God was with him? By the way that he worships when they are set free. How will people know that God is with us on our mission? Could it be by the way we worship when we have been set free? Could it be by the way that we love? They will know we are Christians by our love. Who am I? You are a son of God, a child that has been prepared, whose father won't leave you. You're prepared for this mission. But Moses said, he answered me, who am I? What's the next question? There in verse 13, and Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and they say, the God of your father, and I say to them, the God of your fathers who has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I say to them? Not only who am I, but God, who are you? Moses is just trying to get out of the mission. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I'm prepared for this. But not only that, God, but how do I tell people who you are? How does God respond to him? Look there with me. God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation. I am. It's a state of being. I always have been. I am. But God, who am I to do this mission? But God, who are you when they ask me? I am. I've been. In other words, I always have been and I always will be. Exodus 4, there in verse 1, is Moses' third excuse. His third attempt to try to get out of the mission. Moses answered, "What if they don't believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Isn't this our excuse? What if they're not going to listen to what I have to say? What if they don't believe me when I try to tell people about Jesus? Or more importantly than that, what if they say, "Look at your life. You don't know Jesus. Look at how you act and how you respond. How can you tell me how to live?" Isn't that something we all fear? Isn't that an excuse we all use? Aren't we afraid of the very same thing? But God said, "I'll give you signs. I will give you signs so that they know that you've been in my presence." Then the Lord said to him, "What's in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." And it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hands. You know the other two signs he gives him just later there in this chapter. He says, "Put your hand in your cloak," and he takes it out, and it's a hand that has leprosy, and it's white. And he says, "Put it back in your cloak," and he comes back to fully healed. He said, "But if they still don't believe, go get some water from the Nile and pour it on the ground. And once you pour it on the ground, that water will become blood." There's a whole lot of foreshadowing going on in this story, by the way. He says, if they don't believe you, let them see the signs which I give you. Church, when they say you've not been with Jesus, let them see the signs by which you live. You don't have to defend yourself. Your life screams for you. You don't have to worry about what they say. Keep on serving. Keep on loving. Keep on worshiping. Each time you do, you're throwing your staff on the ground, it's becoming a snake. Each time you do, you're putting your hand in your cloak, and it's becoming like it's leprous. Each time they do, you pour the water on the ground, and they see God living through you. They can't help but see the signs. And if they don't believe you trying to teach them about Christ, it's not your fault. Because the signs are in you. Be brave and courageous. He is with us. Show the signs through your life, and if they don't accept it, we'll kick the sand off our shoes and we'll move to the next one and try to teach. When people ask you this, how dare you tell me how to live? Look at the way you live. All that is an excuse because they don't want to give up the lifestyle that they're living. When you come in with people with love, they can't help but see the signs of God that He gives you, those markers in your life. Moses is about to get really personal, though. He's been told who he is. He's been told who God is. He's been given signs to share with them. But now he's going to talk about something that maybe he's felt self-conscious about for a long, long time. Look at verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, "O Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in my past, nor since I have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." If I were to poll this audience of the scariest things in this life, some would say public speaking would be at the very top. It's a fear. It's been seen many times. Some would say, I don't want to get in front of people and speak. That's not my gift. And for some people, that would be terrifying to do, and especially if you have a problem with your speech. I know Moses. You think God ever takes the things that we're self-conscious about and uses it for his glory? You ever think that may be the case? Okay, I'm about to go back in history a little bit again. For those of you that maybe remember the TV series instead of the movie series, do you remember the country music artist Mel Tillis? That's a member of the Grand Ole Opry. Do you remember? Does anybody remember what problem Mel Tillis had? Mel had a terrible stuttering problem. And he used it to become famous. Do y'all remember that? Now, I'm going to ask you another question. Now, that's one thing. You go, oh, Scott, he used something that he struggled with. He became famous with something he struggled with. Yes, he did. Do any of you remember how he sang? It was beautiful. There was no stuttering. It was crystal clear. He had a voice that you would hear and you would be like, wow, what a gift. Mel used his struggle to become famous in order that he would show his incredible gift through his singing. Do you think sometimes God takes the things that we struggle with and uses them on purpose to show how mighty he is so that it can be a lead into our heart? Do you think there's a possibility of that? But God, I'm slow of speech. I've never been eloquent. God says to him, who gave you a mouth? Who is even the one that created communication? Who even created the ability to talk? Who lets the blind to see or the mute to hear? Now listen to this. This is important there in verse 12. I will help you speak. I will teach you what to say. Do you ever think sometimes that we need the words that God has given us to say? The last thing that Moses, his last effort, comes there in verse 13 of chapter 4. He says, but Moses said, Oh Lord, please send someone else to do it. Have we pleaded with the Lord also? Lord, surely you don't want me. Please, Lord, send someone else. Lord, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to do what you've called me to do. Please, Lord. How does the Lord respond to Moses here? At first it says he gets angry. I've answered all your questions, Moses. It said he burns with anger. But you know what? I know you're afraid. Your brother is on his way. I will give someone to help you with your mission so you don't have to feel like you're all by yourself. You see, the problem is this. We see our reflection in the mirror and we see our shortcomings. We see the things that we struggle with. We see the problems that we have. And God sees us, and he sees this unlimited potential of his creation that has been made in his image. We see the things we struggle with. God sees the incredible possibilities of what we can do with his help. Now, the rest of the story goes, as you know, Moses does go. There's 10 plagues in which the children of Israel are finally set free. They're promised a land to which they travel and they go to, and it creates this incredible nation of Israel, the line from which Jesus will be born. So what do we learn about God from this story? What about his promises? Deuteronomy 31:6, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. What about of his nature? 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Or what about his provisions? What have we learned about how he prepares us? 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3, his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. So, church, this is your mission if you choose to accept it. We have an opportunity to change the world, and more importantly, we have an opportunity to change eternity. Da, 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 da. Doo-doo-doo. If there's something we can do for you this morning to help you with your mission, why don't you come as we stand and sing?